Hello there. That's very exciting when the doorbell rings just as you're about to go live and you're like, well, just a moment. Well, hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lotro plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we made our Soliloquy of Spirit tracker work for the current player, but only for the current player, not for anyone else in the party. And so today, first, I would like to make modifications so that the window is movable and hideable, because it was very distracting while we were running Heligrod and the Rift on Treebeard last weekend. So it'd be great if I could move out of the way and or turn it off until it's complete. So I think we'll divert to some customization there, and then we're going to look at adding and removing rows for each person in the party as they are added and removed. So as always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions. And in the meantime, let's remind ourselves where we were. So in Lord of the Rings Online, we are here in the town, well, in Breetown, with a minstrel. And so if this minstrel goes to the plugin manager and loads MinstrelBuff, we have two things. We have the MinstrelBuff window, which is draggable when we go into the Move UI mode. And we have our little window here, which tracks Soliloquy of Spirit instances on us, and it tracks our inner strength tier, in this case 3. We didn't actually add the little buttons to track the strength. I should make a note that that's something we want to do. I wonder, have we introduced our to-do file yet? We should definitely have one of those. Whoa, that is way too big, Sublime Text. Let's go ahead and shrink you down. And let's go ahead in Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins. This is MinstrelBuffs that we're modifying. And in the MinstrelBuff window, I wonder if there's a README file. There is, or sorry, a to-do file. I don't see one. It's probably fine to make one. So I'm going to make a new text file. I'm going to call it to-do, just a place for me to track my notes here. And in that to-do file, do I have anything else? Let's see. All right, to do. Add tier indicator. Putino Bowen, hello, welcome to the stream. We are just getting started here, remembering where we were at the end. Hello, Zach, as well in chat. Hello, Tan. All sorts of people popping up to say hi. Excellent. You're at work, just hosting with some amazing information. Okay, well, that works too. Hello, Trash. All sorts of fun people. So, just to backtrack, in case you're not familiar with minstrels in Lord of the Rings Online, why am I bothering to do this? Well, the Soliloquy of Spirit is pretty cool, and I would like a visual reminder of how many instances of it are on the tank that I'm healing, because I would like to always have 3 of them going. But also, the inner strength buff runs out faster than the Soliloquy of Spirit do. Soliloquy of Spirit has a 45-second timeout. Inner strength for each tier only has that 30-second. So if you don't buff it up within 30 seconds, then it expires and you have to start all over at inner strength tier 1. And you know, it feels like 3% physical and tactical mitigation is a good thing to have on your tank. Maybe even other people who are a little squishy. And so a visual reminder tracking, oh, it's getting a little low here. Even though the Soliloquy of Spirits run out, the inner strength has not, but it's about to. And if I don't get that rebuff in there, oh, now I've got to start all over. Oh well. So that's sort of the inspiration of this plugin. This might be accomplishable with other plugins, but I didn't see anything that was really had the visual representation that I was going for. And plus, I never worked with party information in the Lua API. I thought this would be a good chance to kind of merge those two. See what it's like to make a plugin that's tracking party membership and displaying it somehow, a lot like Mini-Raid or other UI customizations do. And also target my specific interests, being a minstrel. Cool. Okay, so what did we say? We want to be able to move the window, be able to hide the window. Awesome. those are the first two things I want to do. Like I said, this was a little distracting during raiding because my normal raid UI for mini raid goes right on top of this area. And so it would have been very nice to have already had the ability to move it. Now, we know MinstrelBuffs is using the drag bar library. We can see right here, it's got that same little button in the upper left. It's got the title bar, all the classic signs that it's using that library. Chromite says mini raid can track SOS and stuff. I thought I saw something about it being able to do that. What I wasn't sure of, and it's okay to have some duplicate features out there in the wild, is can mini raid give me a visual UI on how long it has left, and can it also track inner strength and what tier it is, and how many Soliloquy of Spirits are on them. Now, this might very well be very easy to do in mini raid. I just haven't figured out how to do it, and that's okay. Now, for those who don't know, mini raid is an alternative UI for your party or raid composition. In fact, we can come on in here using the Lotro plugin compendium and toss mini raid in. Let's go ahead and click add, and then in the plugin manager, we can click the green arrow to refresh the list, and we can load mini raid. Great. So, well, let's take a second to customize here. It overlays numbers for the buff timer. Interesting. Well, let's do a slight diversion here. Not to say that I shouldn't be doing what I am doing, but it is nice to know what options there are out there. So, I've gone ahead and typed /mini raid space options to bring up the options panel. I do like the UI quick button here. Looks like the Eye of Sauron effect. And in here, there are so many options that I just haven't delved into them. So that's sort of the first question is, okay, I know I've got those two buffs on me. How do I get it to track them? Well, let's go ahead and go into the options. See if we can figure it out from there. Or Chromite, do you know off the top of your head what I would be looking for? I don't think it's the frame, color, class. So maybe it's actually in the effects. There we go. I don't know if I want to be recording. Maybe I do. Oh, there we go. Cool. So, inner strength tier 3. How do I add effect to tracking? Yeah. Okay. And how do I see Soliloquy of Spirit? Track everything on myself. That sounds great. Well, am I just not seeing the Soliloquy of Spirit? Is it here? Well, let me go ahead and move this UI. Because right now it's hard to see that and the options. I'm going to move that over there. So options, and we're going to go ahead and undo the enable layout preview. Great. Okay, well, I am not seeing that. Okay. See, this is my problem with mini raid is there's so much you can do with it that I kind of lose track of how to. But that's okay. Add effect to tracking. Add effect to. Is there a save button? I'm not sure. Like, obviously, mini raid can see this, but why can't I then add the effect? I'm sure there's lots of cool stuff you can do with this, though. track on yourself, track on others. Oh, okay, there we go. Neat. Chrome says, give me a sec. Letting one of my minstrels tell you exactly how I track it. That'd be great. Whether or not I continue working on my modification, it's very cool to see this as a in place in another place. Now, what I would also like to see, maybe, is how many Soliloquy of Spirits are on the target. And some part of me would also like to know what version of the strength is on. Although if you only show on version 3, then if they don't have it, then they need more. So that's not the worst thing in the world. But okay, so if I were tracking, let's see. Again, I did not see Soliloquy of Spirit come across in effects. Probably because it's not a debuff or a curable. Gorman says, I don't need to track how many SOSs are on a target because they use SRS interweave between other skills. Yeah, I might get to the point where I'm skilled enough as a minstrel to do that. Right now, I think it would probably help me to go ahead and have that visual reminder. Also, possibly a button that pops up right next to them, if possible, to say, click this thing. Although you might still have to, click the party member, click this button, click the party member, click this button. But that's sort of where I'm driving towards with that in my head. Where if you need to do the thing, then you click this box here, and that selects them, and then you click right next to them to make the thing happen. I don't know if that's possible, but it's a thing that's in my head as maybe that's a cool idea. Okay, so it may or may not be possible to track Soliloquy of Spirit. I am noticing that, okay, if you are tracking Inner Strength 3, then that will show up. Cool. Okay, so that's definitely a stopgap until I get these modifications done anyway. Very cool. Okay, so let's look at how MinstrelBuffs does the window movement. In fact, plugins manager. I'm going to go ahead and unload MiniRaid. Actually, can we unload it? Yes. Plugins, unload MiniRaid. I'm going to go ahead and unload that for now, so we only have the one that we're working with. And let's go ahead and figure out how is MinstrelBuffs responding to the, on my keyboard it's Control \, and how is it showing this drag bar? Now, I happen to know there is a drag bar library that you can, Lotro interface. If you go to lotrointerface.com, you can go ahead and search drag bar, I think. And this is something that you can add to your plugin. So you can also emulate the UI of the game. Zach says, it would be really nice to have a button in the plugin manager to unload specific plugins instead of just everything. There's not actually a way to unload a specific plugin due to the nature of things. Oh, yes, Laura got started. So imagine you're making cake, and you add in the flour, and you add in the sugar, and you add in the eggs. At any point, you can stop making the cake. You can throw the cake away, but you can't pull out the sugar. You can't pull out the eggs. And plugins work in a similar way. They are in what's called apartments, or sometimes, I can't remember the other word for it, but a plugin specifies an apartment that it goes into. If a plugin does not specify that, it just goes into the global apartment. And so what Lotro can do is load a plugin into an apartment, and then another one, and then another one, but it can't figure out which parts of that apartment came from which plugin. So you can unload the entire apartment and any plugin that was in it. Oh, cool, Chromite came back. So you can have Lotro throw away the whole apartment and all the plugins that are in it, or you can unload everything. I don't think there's a way to unload the global apartment that unload all plugins that aren't in their own apartment. I don't think there's a way to do that. So let me go ahead and create a new tab here. Let's turn off that background. So let me create this, and we're just going to go ahead and call this plugins. And generally for plugins, or I could delete the tab accidentally, create new tab. Why do we even have that button? So rename the tab plugins, and avoiding the delete button, change the filters, and I like to add error and standard. Those are the two channels that plugins can kind of influence. So if I do a slash plugins space list, we can see that the only one loaded right now is MinstrelBuffs. Just for friendliness, I'll pull this open and go ahead and load MiniRaid. And if I redo that, I can go slash plugin space list. Cool. What we see in that list is if there is something in the parentheses after the version, so MiniRaid parentheses 1.4.2 parentheses whatever, that last thing is the apartment name. And so you can do slash plugins space unload space MiniRaid, and that will unload the MiniRaid apartment. And any plugin that is in that apartment gets tossed out with it. And so that's the sort of the unhappy compromise needed, based possibly on lieu of limitations, but definitely based off of how the plugin manager works. Just throw everything into that apartment, and then there's no real way to pull it back out. And even if you could do that, it might be really weird to pull it back out. I'm having a hard time conceptualizing that. What is going on here? Oh, cool, something sold. Thanks, random person who bought a recipe. Cool, yeah, you're welcome, Zach. Zach says, thanks for the explanation. I hope my explanation was as correct as it was helpful. It seems pretty close, but there may be some developer out there who's cringing at my finer details. We'll see. That's an important thing to remember. I'm not on the dev team, and I'm not a professional at plugins. This is a hobby. My day job is very different. And so I will probably say things that are not correct on the stream. I try not to. And I try to do an errata at the beginning of the next stream when there's something egregiously wrong. But yeah, there are things I don't know. There are things that I will get wrong. That's just the nature of it. So if you think I've said something wrong, shout it out. You might very well be right. Cool. Chromite says, to track Soliloquy of Spirit, go to the library tab. Okay, to start, let's go ahead and open up the effects. We're going to go to the library. And he says, at the bottom type search for L or SOL, and add to tracking. Cool. So, actually, while I'm here, inner strength, I added that to alerts. How do I remove? Oh, I can go to alerts and I can remove. Okay, cool. All right, so if that's the case, and if I go ahead and do a Soliloquy of Spirit, another Soliloquy of Spirit, and another, okay, that works very nicely. Cool. All right, I think there's enough differences in what I'm thinking about for my UI that it's worth adding in, if nothing else, to teach me how party membership works. But this is a very nice stopgap, and I think it looks very pretty. So thanks for bringing that up. Oh, it reorders based on the time? What's going on with that? Okay, that's another me thing. I'm not a big fan of how it's ordering based on the start of the effect time, I guess, because the location of inner strength keeps weaving about, and that would drive me nuts. Okay, I feel totally justified in reinventing the wheel. Yes! But thank you for pointing that out, Chromite. That's really cool to know. And I could definitely see how if I was only tracking inner strength and didn't care about Soliloquy of Spirit, as I should probably learn how to do as a better minstrel, then that would not be a problem there. So if I come into effects and then tracking and nix the Soliloquy of Spirit, then that's not going to drive me bonkers because it's not doing the thing. And if I have it right, that is going to be tracking on myself and on others. And we don't have to worry about the stack because it's not a stacking thing. It's literally a different name. Okay, that's awesome. Thanks for shouting that out, Chromate. And in the meantime, we want to go ahead and get rid of MiniRaid, so we can do a slash plugins list. Oh, and as for why, to go back to what Zach was saying, as for why there's not an unload button, I think for the general population of Lotro players who are probably not programmers or maybe not invested in understanding the underpinnings of a plugin system, I think it would be very confusing to have an unload some button where you can click MiniRaid and click unload some, and MiniRaid and possibly some others just go away. Like, that's like, how do you make a UI that makes that user friendly and not confusing or frustrating? Now, the reality is many plugins that have apartments just have an apartment for themselves. They're not combining in other apartments. And so for most use cases nowadays, you could actually have an unload button that is really just unloading this plugin. Or you could make it appear for plugins that have opted in, and Lotro knows which apartments are loaded. So it could be like, oh, this is the only plugin in that apartment. We could offer the unload button. But again, a user interface where buttons are randomly or seemingly randomly pop into and out of existence, like, well, I can unload this one, but I click on here and the unload button goes away. What's going on? This is broken, right? That sounds like a support nightmare. And so having user interfaces that change randomly without knowing why, unless you look at text files in your plugins directory, is not a recipe for success. So my guess is they've sort of left it to the community to spread the knowledge. And it's not secret knowledge. If you type /plugins, you will see right here that you can unload and give it a script state, which is the apartment name, and it will do that. But if you're the type of person who looks at this and says, oh yeah, I totally get what it's saying, then you are not the problem audience for this issue. If you're the type of person who looks at that and says, well, I'm checking out because I don't understand what that is, that's the problem, right? And so anyone in the community who wants to know these things, you're going to go into World, you're going to go into Discord server, you're going to learn it really fast. Because it's not, I'm not saying it's a hard thing, but I'm just saying SSG does not want to be in the position of fielding those questions, right? So anyway, that's my theory on what's going on there. So plugins, unload, MiniRaid, super easy to do when you know that it's possible to do it. All right. Yeah, I would much rather SSG employees were focused on other issues, not this particular UI, right? It's fine. Cool. Okay, so let's dig into moving the window. So the first thing that I see when I go into the MinstrelBuff window and I'm thinking about moving is that, yes, indeed, they do have a drag bar .lua. Sweet. That is great and is almost certainly being used on that main window. So I am curious where it's being used. So no, I don't want to replace anything. If your tool of choice supports it, I'm going to do a recursive search in the MinstrelBuff directory for the phrase drag bar and just see where it's being used. All right, we can see it's being used in drag bar itself. That's not very helpful, but we can also see, yes, indeed, it's being used in buff window. Sweet. So if I wanted to use this in my Soliloquy of Spirit window, let's go ahead and I wonder what happens if we try to import twice. I'm going to not import a second time. In our main folder here, we can see that Soliloquy happens after the main window. No, sorry, the buff window. Yeah, so that's fine. Now I'm curious. What happens if I do it twice? A lot of me learning how things work is just going, I wonder what happens. Well, it didn't break. I feel like that should just be in the main, though. So I'm going to hoist it out of buff window here. Oh, I hate changing existing function. If this is a patch, I don't want to be changing stuff that is not needed to change. But I think this patch, I think my other patches already changed that. So it's fine. We'll figure it out later. So no more drag bar in there. So drag bar is available for Soliloquy Tracker window. How do we use it? Okay, we have just here actually. Okay, in a function, UI locked. That's promising. I would like to know when and where that's called. Okay, locks or unlocks the UI for positioning. Neat, that sounds really promising. So if we add a call for the Soliloquy Tracker window and do something very similar here, then that could work. I'm just wondering why we're always creating a new drag bar. Hey, let's go back to the documentation. UI drag bar, self drag bar window. Interesting. Okay, so we have self.dragbar equals this. Oh, interesting. So they're clearing it each time. I wonder if that's the intention. All right. Constantly redoing work by creating a new object then deleting it makes me a little suspicious. And so I'm just going to go off on a tangent and download the drag bar and extract it. The extraction window appeared on the other screen. And come on in and take a look. So if we look at the drag bar demo, oh, that's that plugin, my mistake. Drag bar demo 1. Let's see, drag bar. I can see where a problem is because the demos are so simple they don't really deal with cleaning up the drag bar. Okay, drag bar. Okay, I'm going to put a pin in it. Obviously, what's in MinstrelBuff is working right now. The fact that they're recreating the drag bar every time is a suspicious-looking thing, but maybe that's intentionally there to fix some other problem that I don't know about. So, let's see. A thing that we haven't done so far is transform the Soliloquy Tracker window into something like the buff window, where we have it in class form, where we have main win having a reference to it. So as part of this fix, we'll want to go ahead and do that as well. So many changes. Let me add that to the to-do. All right, so convert Soliloquy tracker window to class, add reference to main.load, because right now main.load doesn't know how to talk to the Soliloquy window to tell it that the thing has changed, the state of the dragging. Okay. Now I have some notes up here, and I think some of these notes, which we also captured, if you remember, if you were here last time, we also captured this in a sort of a mock-up screenshot. We just did this in MS Paint, where we were in plugins, MinstrelBuffs, and this was the proposed layout. Now, the actual layout is not too much different, right? We don't have little buttons showing the tier of the inner strength, but as for the rest of it, the name could be bigger. But that's a detail that just hasn't happened yet. And we could add a colored border around it maybe, but that's a nicety for later. Well, thank you. Water has been delivered. So each row should display those things. We got that in the screenshot and in the implementation. Make sure to localize. Oh, well, hey, we should add that to our to-do file. Because all the ways we're dealing with detecting skills, we want to make sure that we can do that for German or French or even Russian. All right, add option to show hide. All right, cool. We'll just move those into the to-do file. And in fact, that one is there. And cool. So that simplifies this file a lot. Now, we still had some notes in here about iterating through parties and doing stuff. That isn't needed here. We can go ahead and toss that, well, notes on party iteration. We can just put that right there and grab it when we want it, but it's out of the way. And so now this is the basic stuff, right? The window is just a row. And right now it's just a row for the player, not for anyone else. And so converting this is the right time to do this. So we want to go ahead and kind of mimic what's going on here. So to do that, I'm going to tear this off and use it as inspiration. All right. Why is some of that cut off below my face? That's fine. Okay, so first of all, we know we want the Soliloquy window to be a class turbine.ui.window. And we can see that because that's what's going on in here, is instead we were just making a window. Now we're going to be a window. And function, I'm going to copy paste this thing. Constructor. And do we need settings? I'll think about that. We don't have settings right now, but we're going to need settings. Okay, we'll come back to that. When it's time to save the position of the window to restore it, we'll quite likely use that as a way to pass in the settings for that window. We'll need to bootstrap some settings into how MinstrelBuff currently works, though, and I don't know how that is. We'll have to dig into that. Okay, so the first thing you do is call the parent constructor, so turbine.ui.window, window.constructor, and pass self. And for the rest of this, we don't actually need much else. But we can go ahead and move in all the stuff that we were doing in the create soliloquy window function. And for add soliloquy, we will go ahead and, where was that being called, I wonder? Probably from main. Let's find out. Oh, was it in here? No. Well, I've forgotten everything I was doing. Okay, so local player get instance. Okay, no, I made a row here. So, right, this was an old function that was just playing around with the idea of can we detect and then respond to soliloquies happening in some way. We don't need that because we have a row, and that row is just paying attention to the player. So by abstracting out that idea, we cleaned up the window a lot. Now, we were calling create soliloquy window in this file. Instead, we need to do something similar to what main is doing for buff window. Now, self.buff window is being set somewhere. So let's find that. Awesome. Self.buff window equals that. Self.soliloquy window equals MinstrelBuffs.MinstrelBuff window dot soliloquy tracker window. All right, next plugin, I'm doing something easier to spell. Now, we're not passing any settings yet. That's okay. But now main has a reference to the soliloquy window. And so now main can pass on the change in state for being locked and unlocked. So here's where we want to do the UI locked bit. So I'm going to just copy the function signature, remembering to change the class declaration here. And then what do we do with self.locked? Yes, someone did tell you to don't type when you can copy paste. That's good advice. I like that. Oh, that's interesting. Buff window has a process key down. Why does that happen? UI locked. Okay. Why are there multiple UI locked functions? Buff window is doing it correctly. Main is not. That is interesting. Is process key down not available? What is main? Main is a MinstrelBuffs is just a class. Oh, interesting. So if it's not inheriting from a control, then it probably doesn't have access to process key down, does it? I mean, it could. You could just instantiate a control and ask it to pass those on, but interesting. Okay. Well, in that case, we're going to need that process key down function as well. And I was totally wrong about main needing a reference, or at least for now, main needing a reference. We may still need it for something else. All right, so we want to go ahead and process key down. So unfortunately, those keystrokes are coming in as these just numbers. And so all thing we can do is those args are coming in as hexadecimal values. But we could go ahead and just say turbine.shell.writeLine for args.action, just to give a peek at what's going on. I'll do all of them. So as a general rule, don't write things out to the console when you're getting a process key down, but you know, we're just doing a little test here. Oh, hey, something's wrong. All right, failed to call stuff. Yeah, that's fair. I did mess with orders. All right, so I got an error message because dragbar was relying probably on one of these other imports, and I didn't think about that. Sweet, more problems. Oh, attempt to call a field called that. Oh, that's fun. All right, so main. Line 26. Attempt to call a field. Soliloquy tracker window. Well, did I name it that? I did not. For some reason, I just called it Soliloquy window. That's weird. I should probably name things consistently. We'll have fewer problems that way. Great. Okay, so we got our window back. So if I press F12 and press it again, did we see anything coming out of process key down? No, we did not see that. What about with that? Also no. Well, that's exciting. I was expecting more output from that. Now, we know the buff window is actually happening. Did we need to hook that up? We did need to hook that up. That'll do it. So we forgot to actually request the key down be forwarded to process key down. Well, that's easy enough to do. Okay, so this window, we need to go ahead and transform it into a local variable that we can make use of. So we're going to go ahead and say self dot, but we're just going to go ahead and do it to all of these. Self dot window, and then we can do the same thing here. Self dot window. Now that we have that, we can go ahead and self.window key down, whoops, with a dot equals the anonymous function, sender args. And I'm going to go ahead and just give myself a new line for the contents of this function. I know it's just a one-liner, but self.process key down, sender args. For me, it's a little bit easier to read through the contents of a function like this, just indented, not scrolling off to the end of Oblivion. Okay, so let's go ahead and unload, reload, and F12, still nothing. All right, well, in that case, let's go ahead and come on out to the process key down for buff window and just do the same thing. Let's do turbine.shell.writeLine and see what am I missing. Okay, excellent. So we can see that we're getting a specific code each time we complete the UI show, and that is this number. And if I copy it in by handy dandy calculator in programmer mode, then we can see it is 1.07b, which is precisely what we have here. Now, this is not far off from what I would call a magic number, not very helpful. And so I think naming that is going to be very useful. Now, the other thing was the F12, and we can see we get a number that ends in B3, and that's this one. Okay, so the args.action is coming through, giving us the actions we want to know about. Now, the one thing we're not getting is the escape key. And something you may have noticed is that if you are in the hide UI mode and then you press the escape key, then the UI will come back. But the plugins aren't notified about that using the standard hide UI. And so they can get out of sync this way. Now, the real question is, can the escape key be detected? It can. All right, 145. So, a thing, 145 really. All right. Which is hex 91. So one thing that you could do is, if you want to be extra careful, you can say, if I am hidden and I see the escape key, then go ahead and show myself. So we're going to go ahead and come in and define some constants to track these special values. Now do we have some sort of central place for that? I don't see sort of like a globals. I do see a general functions, which is kind of a place for that. So I think we'll just store it in main. Why not? It's a main place. So if I was to do, let's see, key action, and then, let's see, escape equals, nope. We're going to go ahead and get the hex of 91. Now we should zero pad that. Great. And that 91 is 145 in decimal. Great, perfect. So also we could have key action. And, you know, like I've said before, if there's an in-game name for something, then let's go ahead and try to use that. So if there's a toggle HUD on off, that's the action name, or at least in English, that's the action name. So we'll go ahead and say toggle HUD. And in this case, on mine it's F12. So if I go ahead and get this value, paste it in, whoops, yes. So that is our value there. And remember, you have to prefix it with 0x or Lua will not see it as a hex value, hexadecimal value. And finally, key action, great. Lock, move, UI. What's the one for control backslash where you can move all the things? Right. I guess I'll just scroll down for a second. There's so many things you can bind to. Oh, there we go. Reposition UI. Fantastic. Reposition UI. And we're going to set that equal to, oops. We're just going to copy fresh. I know we already have it but just what would you do if you had to do this from scratch? So paste it in, grab the hex version of that, and go ahead and 0x, paste it in, and there we go. We don't have to look at random hex values anymore. We can just use these. And so what would that look like? Well, in process key down, okay, we're done with that turbine, .chill.writeLine. If args equal key action reposition UI, then lock or unlock the control for movement. If action equals toggle HUD, then our heads up display, then hide or not hide based off of that. Sweet, that feels a little bit more readable. And more importantly, else if args.action equals key action escape, then and self.hidden. So if we think we're hidden but escape happens, then we want to go ahead and self UI hidden not self.hidden. Something like that. That would be the first step towards supporting that other way of toggling plugin visibility. Or UI visibility, I should say. So we go ahead and load here. Then if I go ahead and press F12, the MinstrelBuff window is hiding as expected. If I hit F12 and then hit escape, oh, see, this is a problem because it's not always when you hit escape, is it? Because if I'm in the middle of chatting, no. So what's... Well, it's better than nothing. It looks like there's some inconsistency because we saw that first time I pressed escape, something else grabbed it. Oh no. Oh, that is frustrating. So if you are in hide mode, things are still visible. I'm just toggling my inventory with I and then hitting escape to close it. And so only if all windows, hidden or not, are closed. Oh, I see why plugin developers don't bother with escape. That is messy. That is frustration in and of itself. Okay, that's a terrible idea. Let's never do that again. So escape can clear or can toggle plugin visibility, or sorry, UI visibility. If you're in F12 and you press escape, bringing up the system menu will toggle the visibility. But if you already have some sort of UI open and you press escape, it does not. Ah, that's sad. Okay, well, as it stands, the community definitely already has a solution where if you press escape to accidentally get in that mode, well, you just go back in, you press escape again, and you say, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that next time. So, oh well, I thought we could be clever, but because the escape key is only sometimes toggling the UI, that's a no-no. Okay, well that's simpler then. So in our Soliloquy tracker, what I noticed was that this function was not being called yet. And I would like it to be called test process key down. And so I need to figure out where's the breakdown. So turbine.shell.writeLine calling process key down. So this is just one of those things where if the plugin's not behaving the way I want it to, I'll just add some debug statements. And in this case, we'll come back in. And now we're not hitting escape anymore. Oh, yeah, that's what caught the first escape. Okay, so let's go ahead and control backslash. I'm not seeing that. Well, that's fascinating. Neat. Oh, of course. We need to actually ask to opt into keyboard events. By default, for probably performance reasons, not every control gets told when a key is pressed. We want to go ahead and get told when a key is pressed. Ideally, we could give it a list of keys we care about or actions that we care about, but as it is, we just have to filter them ourselves. Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and test it, but I'm pretty sure that was the problem. Well, you know, when I say that, I didn't save. Ha. Okay. Okay, yes, calling process, and we're in. So that was the one and only problem there. Sweet. Okay. Exo says, to be fair, who hides the UI and then decides, I want to open the escape menu? Yeah, no, you know, it's funny. I'm so used to using the escape key to just close things out that, yeah, it just happens to me. And maybe this is a me problem and not a community problem, where I've got the UI off and then I hit escape because I'm so used to doing something or whatnot. But yeah, it's yeah, maybe that's a very rare thing that I just stumble across because of my particular muscle memory. Could be. Little Redhead has made a pun about Hyde and Jekyll. Excellent. We try not to have too many Jekyll modes with our plugins. Oh, hey. Attempting to call functions. Yeah, I'm definitely calling functions that aren't defined yet. Thanks. Error messages. All right, so first of all, let's go ahead and grab those changes. We do want to go ahead and call these by their proper name. And okay, we don't have that UI lock, or sorry, we don't have that UI hidden button function. Apologies. And so we're going to want to head and at least instantiate that function. Okay, come back in, plugins manager, and unload load. Awesome. So at least we can respond to that and that. Okay, so Soliloquy tracker 28 self. Oh, of course, I didn't actually change the class name for that function. That will cause problems. Perfect. No errors now. Okay. So we need to do something with the hide UI locked UI hidden functions. Neat. So the first one, the UI hidden one, that one looks super easy. Now I deleted it just off on the theory that we might want to restart, but what does set visibility do? Aha. Oh, okay. Yes, of course. This window cares about its visibility based off a bunch of different things. I think we do not care about that for this window right now. It's either on or off. And so our UI hidden can be simpler. So we can just say self.window set visible to is visible. Let's go ahead and rename that parameter from hide to isVisible. So we can pass it off to setVisible, convinced that it is going to be in parity and not a flip-flop version of a Boolean where false is true and true is false. Ugh. Okay, so isVisible. And then UI hidden, not self.hidden. Do we need to track that? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we can just say self.window.isVisible. We can go ahead and invert that instead. So whatever it is, go ahead and do the opposite. In fact, this is a one-liner. We could go ahead and maybe collapse that right here, but I could see where we might want to go ahead and expect that there might be more complicated stuff happening. So we'll keep it separated for right now, or we'll try to. And then if we go ahead and use F12, yes, we can see that this window is disappearing when F12 happens. If we hit F12, hit escape a couple of times. Okay, we're back. Hit F12, now only MinstrelBuff is visible, which is excellent. Why would you not want that? Let's see. Cool. The tracker part works as well. Nice. But of course, if we were to go ahead and hit escape, we'll get the UI in sync with the plugin state. Okay. Oh, that's still open. So the other thing, the UI locked, that's the big one. That's the one I'd really love, is the ability to move this window around. Even if we're not saving the settings right now, just the ability to move it out of the way when I'm in the middle of a raid or something, that'll be very cool. So the next thing, and we saw this up above in buff window, is they're creating a new drag bar and then destroying it when they're done using it. That seems like more extra work. I mean, most people aren't repositioning things all the time, but that seems weird. I'm wondering if we can simplify that. And so they have a self.locked, and that seems useful. So let's go ahead and get our own self.locked equals true. So I like to make changes that are consistent with how the existing plugin is written, even if I disagree with the existing plugin. But the prevalence in this plugin of calling it locked, instead of using the in-game UI is repositionable or something, it makes me a little sad. Like, is UI repositionable? Sure, that's longer to spell, but it's a little bit more obvious what's going on instead of locked. Locked feels more ambiguous. But for now, I'm going to be consistent. And we're going to come on in and say self.locked equals locked. And again, I would really like these parameters to be like is locked. I can fix that one. We'll see how long I keep that change, but for now. Nope, 5 seconds. That's all it took. Okay, and then I wonder if the case is the drag bar is always visible if it's there. No, there's a set bar visible. Okay, so if that's the case, then let's go ahead and in the locked section of the constructor, let's go ahead and say self.dragbar equals MinstrelBuffs.MinstrelBuffsWindow.dragbar, and we're going to pass it self.window, just like before, and we're going to call that something reasonably short, otherwise it'll wrap into a new line. Soliloquy. Let's see what that looks like. Now, a couple more lines, self.dragbar, set bar on top is true. Self.dragbar set bar visible. We're going to set that to false because we only want to do that down below. Self.dragbar set draggable. We're going to set that to false as well. I think that seems like a good default state. And then self dot, are we doing a size change? Oh, might as well. Self dot size changed equals an anonymous function taking two parameters, sender and args, with which we pass that onto dragbar and call the layout function so it can adjust its width to match. Sure, I like it. Okay, when I see all of that hoisted out of the UI locked, then what's left? If self is locked, then we want to go ahead and do stuff. Else, we want to do some other stuff. And then we're done. Now, we already saw these two things. Nope. These two things, set bar visible and set draggable. That sounds like great things to reiterate if we're locked. And otherwise, to do the other, to go ahead and set those to true. But what are we really saying? We're just setting these to the opposite of locked. Which means local. So we really want to set it to the old value, right? Yeah. So local previous state equal. I don't like that name. Is visible or draggable equals self.locked. And then we'll update that, and then that. Well, if that's the case, then we don't actually need two branches. Maybe that's all we need for that function. Let's see. There's probably some reason why it's not this simple. A lot of the times when something looks unnecessarily complex, it's because it is necessarily complex. Well, first thing, we're not going to compile like this, are we? Okay, dragbar Lua, attempt to index a local self. Really? Well, that's certainly not what I was expecting. All right, let's come back in here, 180. Huh. I've triggered an error in the the drag bar plugin library. All right, set bar visible. I foolishly used a dot operator instead of a colon operator. Don't make my mistake. The colon is important for getting the self variable in, I believe. That should work. Also, who's been buying my auctions? Thanks, people. Appreciate that. Okay, so interesting. Okay, so is the bar's visibility overriding? It might be. Maybe this is the problem. Set bar visible. Yes, so we're setting the bar's visibility and also the target's visibility. But that just means that we could go ahead and say self.window set visible to true, perhaps. let's take a look and see if that is enough to trick this, or if we're really just going into uncharted territory. Ooh, hello. That is a draggable window. Okay, I'm really liking this library. I haven't used it before as a plugin developer. I've only used it as a consumer, seeing it in use in other plugins, and that is just super snazzy. Okay, so there may be some other reason why this was more necessary, but simply instantiating the drag bar once and then coming in and setting, setting the bar visible, setting the bar draggable, overriding the Windows visibility that just got toggled. That might be enough. And if that's the case, then I'm super happy with that. Gnarnar says, is there a way to programmatically mess with the melodies that minstrels attack and heal with? Or is that hard-coded into the game? So I assume you mean noises like what comes through there. I'm not sure how well that's coming through the stream, but that, or the screams. No, the answer is plugins don't have access to change what sounds play for skills. It is conceivable, not in a plugin world, but it is conceivable that because those resources are stored in files on your computer, that you could potentially modify the resource files on your computer, inserting your own sounds on top of that. That is completely unsupported and might very well mess with future patch files that assume that your file is a certain way. Exogenesis technically, or yes. Yeah, so all that being said, there is no supportive way to do that. It is not necessarily impossible. It is not recommended. I would even go so far as to say contraindicated, because you would be entering unsupported territory land and possibly necessitating an uninstall and install from scratch if you didn't save off the old resource files. Oh, nice. Exo says, don't need to do that. Prime uses an external sound player that gets called by the plugin. That's fascinating. What do you mean by external sound player? Okay, now I'm curious. I haven't used Prime very much, but if it's in the Lotro plugin compendium, let's go take a look. Prime plugin. Yeah, the rating I do tends to be way out of date, so Dragok is fun. Narnar says, I want my minstrel to kill things with heavy metal riffs. Well, I can see where you would get that with all of the screaming that they do. So, plugins, Prime plugins. My goodness, that is a lot of stuff. That's a lot of waves. Okay, well, you've got me curious. What? Let's go ahead and do a search for airhorn.wave. Plugins, Prime plugins, there we go. Interesting. Oh, you think the sound player is a separate package? Oh. Okay. I haven't searched for sound before. Prime sound player, interesting. Oh, no. Oh, that's clever. Okay, so you can live log your standard chat to a file. This program that runs on your computer monitors that file for changes and looks for special tags in the Slavic. You ask, servers haven't closed yet. I don't know what you're referring to. What closure? So it's monitoring the file for those special entries, and when it detects those special entries, plays a file through your operating system sound player, completely separate from Lotro. That is a really interesting way to do it. Slavic, Lotro servers. So you're asking if Lotro servers have it closed. Well, no, I'm on a Lotro server right now. Not that you would know it from my just standing around in Breetown, but this is the Treebeard server with 197 non-anonymous players online right now, enjoying that Shadows of Angmar content. Okay, so that's lovely. That is a use for the for chat logging that I hadn't thought about, is just feeding information to an external program that can then do stuff with it. That's delightful. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Exo. I don't have any particular thoughts in mind for how I can use that now, but it's good to know that that's possible. 198 non-anonymous players are online right now, and on just this one server. And of course, there are many Lotro servers up right now, and to my knowledge, none of them are closed. Okay, so that's a fascinating digression. Thanks so much for pointing that out. Now, those sounds are going to be on top of whatever's happening in the game, of course. So you could, I could see the use for like an alarm clock and like, oh my goodness, run, whoop whoop, or whatever. Or especially custom recorded things that give you audio cues. But those are not going to interfere with the sound effects that are already coming through in the game. Now, maybe you turn your sound effects down a little bit so that these can stand out more, but no, that's... but you could have a plugin detect that you were using minor, perfect, or major ballads, or the codas or whatnot. Oh, you can filter sounds. You're right. Okay. So yes, you can have a plugin looking for those specific skills that you are using. You can filter out the sounds here. You could use Prime or something like it to play alternative sounds through Windows. I suspect it would be slightly delayed compared to in-game, but depending on how snappy everything is, that would be really interesting. Neat. Okay, that's a fascinating idea and way better than trying to hack into the resource files. Exo says, biggest problem is detecting the skill usage. The event for the cooldown only fires after the animation. That does sound like a thing. What about in the combat log? How fast do you see it there? Let's go ahead and close. We're going to go ahead and create a new tab, and we're going to go ahead and call that combat. Oh, we'll just look at combat player, actually. Okay, so in combat player, it's not instantaneous. I'll give you that. But the sound doesn't start right away either. So the sound just barely before the text. Exo says might not show there. Well, the good news is, in general, the stuff that you're doing tends to show up. I could see if you're in a combat-heavy area with lots of stuff happening, maybe some noises would be skipped. Then again, you're going to be hearing a lot of stuff going on. But definitely, if you're soloing out in the world or if you're doing small group content, then the stuff that you do will show up in the combat player channel. And stuff that is done to you, or sorry, well, yeah, stuff that you're doing is combat player, stuff the enemy is doing combat enemy, stuff that is causing kills is combat event. I think Slavic is more concerned about server closure than is warranted at this time. Okay, so that's cool. Fun digression. Thanks for the question, Knarnar. Excellent, and thanks for jumping in there, XO. That's delightful. I don't know if I'll be able to use that, but it's so good to know that there's such creativity out there. Okay, in the meantime, we have a window that we can drag around. Awesome. And we don't have the option to hide it. But MinstrelBuffs already has an options page. Oh, that's funny. That's a test button that shows up because I'm in debug mode. So we have the options only visible in combat. I would also like a separate option to make use of the Soliloquy window. And for that, we need to figure out where the options are being set. All right, we have an option window. Sweet, that seems likely to be where we're going. Well, Slav, I don't know what to tell you. People have been predicting the doom of Lotro for many years now, and they continue to be wrong, so we'll see what the future holds. Option window. So we can see MinstrelBuff options is a text. I'm not sure what's going on there, but only visible in combat. Excellent. We can see that that's happening. Theme options. We can see that's being populated, and the show debug options here. So probably this is a whole separate thing. So probably down below, we'll want to go ahead and Slav asked, what am I doing? So this is Plugging Along, all about Lotro plugins, and today we are making modifications to the MinstrelBuff plugin so that it can also track the Soliloquy of Spirit and Inner Strength buffs on, right now, just the player, but the goal is to also track on party members. And that's because I really want to have a visual reminder, because I love playing minstrels, but I wouldn't say I'm great at it. And I want that visual reminder that I'm at tier 3 of Inner Strength, giving those plus 3% physical and tactical mitigations, and oops, it's about to run out, I really need to boost it back up. Macros, I think plugins are more like I think of plugins as mini programs running inside Lotro. And there's whole bunches of different plugins out there. If you're just getting into plugins, I highly recommend going over to Lotro interface, where you can check out in the download section, you can check out Lotro standalone plugins and find all sorts of different categories and all sorts of different plugins within there. Okay. So we have an options window. We want to go ahead and add a checkbox here, and really it's going to look just like this combat visible checkbox. So I'm just going to steal all of that and bring it to play down here. So instead of combat visible checkbox, though, we're probably going to call it something else, like Soliloquy visible. Soliloquy visible checkbox. And we want to set the parent, use Soliloquy tracker, and the position should be updated. So we have a Y. Excellent. Do we have a Y? Oh, yes, we do. Let's go ahead and hoist that out since we have it. And set the position, 20 over is fine. Set the size, it's probably fine. Get checked. We're going to go ahead and do something different here. Not sure what. Oh, let's set that to true by default. No, let's go ahead and just hide that for a moment. And the checked change, we want to go ahead and have something similar. Function, option window, and we're going to go ahead and call it Soliloquy window visible changed. That sounds great. And now we can use that and make sure we call that instead. Okay, so we don't have a settings yet for the for this window, that's fine. All I wanted to be able to do is hide it in the case of it being in the way right now. So actually, I will do self.soliloquy visible checkbox set checked to be true, because by default I want it to be in use. Okay, and then we want to go ahead and say y equals y plus 30, so that that debug option down below can be in the right place. All right, let's give that a try. Is that going to show us what we want? Well, for one thing, the window's on top of the other one now, and we can see that that has reset in position. The soliloquy tracker doesn't have settings right now, so it's always going to be in a certain spot. That's okay. So, final, we're not actually hooked up to this checkbox, but it is there. So let's go ahead and hook up. What do we do in this function? That's a great question. The option window has access to settings. Does it have access to anything else? It does not seem to. Let's go check out settings and see how this is working, because I'm finding this very interesting. Okay, so settings, specifically, set effect window only visible in combat. How does this work? We have, okay, there's an actual settings table, great. And then, oh, interesting. So, if we have been given a callback function, then go ahead and call the callback function. That's delightful. I don't know if that's how I would have done it, but that's okay. It's how it is done. And we can see that if we come into the buff window, we can see that being set here in the buff window, where self.settings.something equals that function. That's delightful. So let's go ahead and actually bring that feature into the soliloquy window, wherever it has gone. Where'd my window go? Did I close it? That seems like something I could have done. So, in the buff window, it was just in the constructor. That's fine. And we do need settings to be passed in, though. That is a thing. So we knew that was a possibility this whole time. So we're going to go ahead and bring in settings, and we'll go ahead and do a self. Do I need that? Yeah, okay. Self.settings equals settings. We probably did that right there. Yeah. And self.settings. Now, obviously, this name is not great. We're going to go ahead and say soliloquy window visible changed equals an anonymous function that calls self.setVisibility. Now, self.setVisibility isn't actually a thing, but that's okay. We can make it a thing. Okay, so self.is window visible. You know, I don't want to conflate the concept of it being visible from it being used, and I'm afraid I'm going to do that. So if I come back into settings here, or I should say the option window. Let's go ahead and call it soliloquy window used, not visible. And that's going to hopefully save us some trouble. And in settings, so we don't have that yet. In here, used equals function. Because in here, we want to say self.used equals true, but so self.used equals not self.used, and then self dot window set visible self.used. And this is actually where we'll start getting more complicated with the UI hidden, right? Because we want to set that to being is visible only if we're being used at all, right? So if self.used, or if not self.used, let's see, local is visible equals self.used and is visible. Cool. Except I've used that same one is used and visible. Okay. So if it's used and it's visible, then we'll go ahead and be visible. Okay, that's going to be more along the lines of what we're looking for. But finally, we need to actually have something in settings. Now, we're just going to mimic this set effect window only visible in combat and go ahead and use the Soliloquy window used changed name here. All right. We can actually save off that value. That's cool. I wonder if these are initialized somewhere. Oh, neat. Okay. Well, we could go ahead and say Soliloquy window used is going to be a new thing. If it's equal to nil, then it's equal to true. We'll default to that. Okay, so if type of self dot that changed equals function, then give it a call. So that hooks that up. The options window can do self dot settings and call the function that we know is going to be defined. Self dot soliloquy visible checkbox is checked. Great. Now, we could be receiving a parameter here. It's okay. We know the checkbox. Oh, hey. Chat happened. Awesome. Gnanar says, I just bought a couple of those on the Black Friday sale. Went from level 52 to level 122 fast. Ah, with the store stuff. Yes. That's some. I have a couple of Valars sitting around, and I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like, oh, leveling up a character. I don't want to do that today. Valar. So they're just sitting in my shared storage until that day. Steady Eddie says, does this game support hot load when editing the plugins? Kind of. So we mentioned this earlier, actually. If you are working with plugins, one of the things to be aware of is that you can do a list that gives you slightly more information. So slash plugins space list gives you a list of plugins and which of those plugins are loaded. So I've just loaded a second one. And so if I am seeing something in the parentheses there at the end after the version, that's an apartment, and that means it's very easy to unload and reload that plugin, and you can even bind that to keys so that you can just press 1 and 2 or whatever to easily unload and reload. Or if you're just working on a single plugin like I am, you can just hit unload all and reload. And hey, right there, I've got a syntax error. I should probably fix that. Just a moment. All right, what was that? So Soliloquy Tracker, line 12. Yeah, that sounds about right. Attempt to index field settings. Oh, right. Excellent. I forgot to pass settings. Self.settings. Great. So as we can see, I unloaded, I reloaded, and so I don't have to exit the game. I don't have to log off. I can just hit unload and reload. Or more targeted, if my plugin has its own apartment, I can unload just that apartment and leave every other plugin still there. So I can unload apartment, reload apartment, unload the apartment, reload whichever plugins go into that apartment. Oftentimes it's just the one, but you can have more than one plugin in an apartment. And so for editing a plugin, especially like this, where I only have the one plugin that I'm working with, it's as simple as unload all, reload all. Now any changes are live. And if your plugin saves settings, when you hit that unload, any settings that's going to save are flushed out to the system. And when you hit load, they're coming back in. Zeddy Eddie says, thanks, great explanation. Well, thank you very much. Keep up the great work. I love stuff like this when I'm playing games. Yeah, me too. I really like using plugins to enhance the play experience, but I also like playing around with making my own. And hopefully you are getting some of that behind the scenes. Cool. Okay, so we have a options page that maybe is now hooked up. We have use Soliloquy Tracker off on Suite. Now, the one thing is, we thought, or I thought in the options window, that I didn't have a good default value for this. But as it turns out, as a part of hooking all this up, we do have a self settings get effect. Well, it's not get effects window anymore, is it? Oh, okay. Oh, neat. Okay, so we'll want to go ahead and add a function here, which is get Soliloquy window used. And we'll return that value here. Now it's interesting. It feels like you could just go ahead and go straight for settings, .settings table, .whatever. But again, we're going to kind of try to blend in with how they're doing things in this plugin already. So we have get Soliloquy window used, and we're going to use that as the starting value. And if I have this right, we can go ahead and unload, reload, come back into the options. Cool. Let's uncheck this, unload the plugin, reload the plugin. It didn't save that off. Okay. Well, that is perhaps not surprising. Let's go take a look at what else we might have missed. Let's take a look at this other one that we know works. Okay, so we already emulated the loading. What else do we have? Well, I would have kind of expected it to be there. Ah, Little Redhead, thanks so much. Yes. In fact, we have the get ready spam. Thanks, move out. Yes, do be sure to use that if you haven't already. If you have multiple accounts, you can use it on each account. Okay, so why did that not get saved in the settings? Or if it did, why am I not seeing it being there? Let's go ahead and take a look at the options window where settings checked, self settings get Soliloquy window used. Awesome, yes. Well, let's go ahead and unload all, load back in. Okay. Unload all, load back in. Okay, that's not getting saved. That's interesting. I didn't need it to be being saved, but now that I've gone through all the work of possibly getting it to save, I'm wondering why it's not. So let's go look at the save function. We're seeing it being used everywhere. Okay. Setting is saved. Save that. We have a settings encoder, encode table, settings table. None of that seems particularly suspicious, but we can see that's getting saved to character scope. Let's go check out that file. I'm curious. So if we come into documents, Lord of the Rings Online, plugins, my mistake, plugin data, and come on in to Treebeard, Affodil, and we have the MinstrelBuff plugin data. Let's go ahead and open that in our editor of choice, and we have the Soliloquy window used equals true. Awesome, okay. Unload, and it's still equal to true. Interesting. Well, you know, I assumed this other one was saved. Let's go ahead and... Okay, so the other one saves. That's good. Chances are we missed something in hooking things up. That's totally fine. Let's go back to our options window. Our option for this, set checked equals that, and then this function. Set setting, okay, yeah. And in settings, settings, yes. We have value, self setting is that equals value, and we do a save. Okay, well, when in doubt, turbine.shell.writeLine, new s value. And we'll just do a toString on that because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Boolean value, and I don't want to deal with that. Gnar says, hey, little redhead. Okay, so if we come into the options, let's go ahead and... Oh, hey, that's not getting written out. Let's double check that I saved the changes, come back in. Okay, that's not getting written out. What's going on there? Okay, so we can see that new e value. Great. So this function is definitely getting called. Let's check to see, is it getting called anywhere else? Just the options window, okay. And so we're not missing anything there. This should be getting called. So what is missing? This feels like something really obvious is staring me in the face. What is going on here? All right, just to convince myself that something's happening, existing S value. Is no. Okay. Oh, of course. Had myself worried there for a moment. So, existing S value is true. Turn it off, unload, load. Existing value is still true. And we're seeing that because this does not seem to be doing what I want it to do. Because this function is not apparently being called. Oh, of course. I didn't name them distinctly. So the effect only visible in combat and the effect only visible in combat changed. So this should be set Soliloquy window used. So there's a get and a set pair, of course. And then this is set Soliloquy used. And then everything works. Yeah, okay. Uncheck, unload, reload. There we go. Oh my goodness. So yes, it was completely obvious. In the settings for MinstrelBuff, we have get and set pairs, and then we have an optional, do you want to be told about this thing, that is currently set up to be either nil or a function. Oh cool, thanks Little Redhead for answering that question from Gnar. Okay, so that was like pulling teeth compared to what I was expecting it to be, but we have the bonus of we have a setting that is being saved just for free. So if I unload, if I reload, that setting is there. And now that I know a little bit more about how the settings works, I feel like the window position might not be that bad. And so let's take a look. What's going on here? Main pause X, main pause Y. So these are pixel values. And so if I just had a soliloquy X and a soliloquy Y, then we could go ahead and save those off. That would be kind of convenient, actually. Let's go take a look at main pos X. Okay, so we have an initial location. So self setting is get main pos X. And in settings, we have a get main pos X and we have a set main pos. Okay. So, a thing that concerns me about this way of doing settings, now that I'm going to change it, is that every time you add a setting, we're adding a helper, a setter, and a getter function for that. Now, that's maybe not the worst way in the world to do it, but it does mean that I'm about to add another position, X and Y. So that's 3 more functions that are going to be kind of identical to these functions. In fact, I'm just going to start off by copy-pasting them. Awesome. So get Soliloquy pause X, and then get Soliloquy pause Y, and then set Soliloquy pause. Great. But same thing here. Soliloquy, 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 Soliloquy. There we go. So that was a lot of copy paste with some possible mistakes being made. Okay, but at least there's no more main. So that was a lot of copy paste, and that concerns me whenever you're doing a lot of copy paste there. Tanner has a question. What happens if you buy the 99-point quest packs and you don't own the particular expansion? That's an interesting question. In my limited experience, if you go into an area that you don't have the expansion, like I went into Mordor. Sorry, I went into Moria before I had the Moria expansion. So I could follow the epic line, but any of the quests, if you tried to interact with an NPC, there would just be a little purchase the quest pack thing above their head. So based on that very limited experience, I would guess that if you have the quest pack, then you could walk into an area and do the quests. Like that's the part of the expansion that allows you to interact with those NPCs and get those quests, but not necessarily to do instances or raids or that kind of thing. So I don't know, but I will tell you that 99 Lotro points is a steal for an experiment. Like 100 Lotro points is something that you can very easily acquire just in game. You don't even need to purchase them or anything. If you clear out, in fact, I have better numbers here. Why do I keep closing the plugin compendium when I keep on installing plugins? Like this is a thing on this. All right, so D-Tracker. Oops, the D-Tracker plugin is a plugin that I wrote because I wanted to have a better understanding of what deeds were available and how they worked hierarchically. But also it will show you how many Lotro points that you can get from doing things. So as an example, if you do all of the deeds in the Shire, that's 150 Lotro points. And so not to say that you should just create another character and do all the deeds in the Shire and get 150 Lotro points, but if you did that over the course of, a Friday evening, you would have enough Lotro points to pay for one of those quest packs because they're extremely discounted for however many more hours we've got today. So if you have 100 Lotro points, I would say, yeah, that's probably worth the investment if you don't already have it. If you buy the Trove, you don't need the packs. I believe that's correct. I got the quad pack back in the day when that was a thing, and it came with, for each of the expansions that included, the quest packs were a part of that. But I haven't checked out the Trove, so fingers crossed it's as friendly. Dagger Thief is commenting that there is a delay in customer service, and that is a known thing. SSG, as Little Redhead has said, they are working on hiring more staff. It's just a question of getting people onboarded and working through the queue. If you have more questions about that, you'll have to ask an SSG employee. I have no inside information on that process. Anyhow, so yes, right now, Affidel has access to tens of thousands of Lotro points, theoretically, though not on this server because most of the game's not available on Treebeard yet. Cool. Oh, interesting. Silencer says, I need to give a PSA to anyone who still has a bunch of old Turbine CD keys rolling around or account keys. If you enter those serial numbers in the Lotro shop, some of them grant shot points. I have a few that were floating around on my Steam account and my humble bundle account, and between me and my spouse, we got about 4,000 points. That's excellent. Unfortunately, I only ever had the one CD key that I used for the Shadows of Angmar way back when, so I have gotten whatever I have gotten out of it. Cool. Yes. Okay. No, I totally don't mind distractions. I go off on tangents myself. I totally don't mind going off on tangents that you all provide me. But yeah, we have a get position and a set position, so maybe we can do something with that. Awesome. Now the buff window, when it starts off, it gets its position from settings. All right, that's easy enough to do. So we have a set position here. Let's go ahead and, excuse me, let's go ahead and get the soliloquy position X and position Y. Now this is interesting. I don't know why it's 2 functions. Like you can easily return a tuple, 2-value pair or more from a single function, and it would just look like position X pos Y equals get soliloquy pos. I think I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Now, I know, right? Like, stop making changes to the architecture of the system. But be aware, you can totally return multiple values. It just looks like return 200, or whatever. And on the receiving end, any value that you don't catch as a variable just gets discarded. Okay, so we have pos X, set position, pos Y, set position, and now we just need to know where we set it. Now we can double check. Okay, set main pos. Awesome. We're doing that in the UI locked. Okay, so they're not doing it all the time, but when we undo the move things around option, then they go ahead and save it off right then. That makes sense. So in our UI locked, we can go ahead and say if locked, then self.settings set, and of course we know it's soliloquy position and self get position. And again, this get position is returning a tuple, an X and a Y, and so we are passing off 2 variables to set soliloquy position, which is expecting 2, so that's all good. Okay, so if that's the case, if that's all it takes, whoa, all right, Prime, you have added a bunch of stuff into my list here, which is fine, but it's a little much. So Prime plugins, you must go. Okay, refresh, there we go. So let's load MinstrelBuffs, and then, okay, we can see it defaulted to 200, 200. That's not where I would want it to be eventually, but that's okay. So we've moved it to middle of the screen, unload, reload. Oh, that's so beautiful. Okay, that's going to be super useful for me going about this week, because on Treebeard we are trying to do more of the endgame content of Shadows of Angmar endgame content, and that includes 12-person Heligrod and 24-person Heligrod Dragonwing and 12-person Rift and Landscape Ferndor and the spider, Bagrath. And those landscape ones are really tricky if you're on deadly or higher difficulty, because yeah, you got orbital bombardments coming down on you while you're surrounded by death water, and it adds an extra level of excitement to what would otherwise be a routine encounter. So sweet, I'm very excited about that. I'm gonna go ahead and drag that all over just because I can. Nice. Okay. So kudos to MinstrelBuff original developer for making that very easy to slot in new settings and connect up the options panel to anything else that wanted to know about it, or at least one thing that wanted to know about it. So that was the settings, that was options, and that was drag bar. Cool, okay. So in our to-do file, let's slide some of those notes down. We wanted to be able to move the window. Oh, we already converted that. We wanted to be able to move the window, hide the window, Awesome. Now, the one thing that I really would like to squeeze in the next couple of minutes, if I can, or at least I'm going to get started, is the thing that is displaying the UI here. And just to remind ourselves what that looks like, it's been a little while. It's got space for up to 3 Soliloquy of Spirits and 1 Inner Strength. And what we talked about in our kind of our mock-up here was using this third one, where we have little ticks above the UI that shows what strength level we're at. And that way, we can at a glance tell if it needs to be buffed up or not. And so that way, that might be an enhancement on what Mini Raid provides, which only will tell you, are you at tier 3 or not? And instead, this will also tell you how far do you need to go until you get there. Oh my goodness, Yule is coming up. I have 2 completionist characters on different servers, and that's going to take some time. Yule! Silencer says, I do have a question. Is there a list somewhere of all the old items and consumables currencies I need to drop off and get converted? I haven't played for several years, and my vault is full. So, they just did, you probably heard, the legendary item Revamp. And so there are numerous in-game items currently, hold on a sec, like these Heritage Runes of Legends and some other things that there will be a purpose for them, but it is still yet to be released. And so the current advice from SSG is go ahead and hang on to those legendary item thingamajiggies until that system is in place, and then there'll be a way to turn that into something useful for the new system. That being said, the new system looks really cool. I tried it out on Evernight. I've been maining on Treebeard a lot, but I did pop over to Evernight just to try it out. And the UI definitely needs some work, and they know that, and they're doing some work on it. But the underlying mechanics really please me, because my biggest problem with the old legendary system was mostly a suspension of disbelief, right? We're told this story about how these are super ancient and rare and unique items from a distant age, and it's really hard to make them, and they're super powerful and awesome. And then you walk 10 feet and you're like, oh, this one's better. I'll just throw this old one in the wood chipper. And then you go a little bit further. Oh, this one's really cool. That one, wood chipper. And so there was that contrast between the mechanics, which would be fine in any other game, and the lore, which is like, these are super awesome. You carry it all your life. You have a lineage. You pass it down to your grandchildren's grandchildren. And so the new system is going to much more closely match how I envisioned the lore to work with these in-game items, I think. I mean, I haven't played with it hardly at all, but just from what I've seen, the wood chipper model of legendary item advancement seems to be going by the wayside, and I am very pleased with that, because the connection of the item to the lore that has inspired it seems much stronger now. Okay. Yes. Little Redhead points out, if you are have a hunter and you needed traveling rations, those are no longer necessary, and there may be some other stuff like that. Yeah. Little Redhead points out, if you come back on Friday evening or daytime, depending on your time zone, and check in with Druid's Fire, she has definitely played a lot more and a lot more various classes than I have over many years. So she might have a better idea, especially if you come with specific items. That being said, the Lotro Wiki, if you have not played around there, is well worth a trip. So LotroWiki.com, Lotro-wiki.com. I'm curious if traveling rations are still in there. There we go. So you might very well find advertisements. Thank you. You might very well find this item can no longer be purchased and is not required for traveling. It may still exist in many inventories. It can be sold for cash. Okay, there's a category for obsolete items. Good catch, Little Redhead. So you might use this as a starting point and just be like, I don't see any use for this. Is it maybe in this list of obsolete items? Ancient unholy relic of eons past, mythical legendary tier. All right, I'm game. Whoops. I didn't copy the A there. Well, I don't know what that is, but hey, there's a Lotro Wiki on mysterious relics. Oh, that's a deed. So, yeah, I think what you'll also find is, especially if you're not overloading with dozens of questions, but if you pop into the world chat on your server and just say, hey, I'm a returning player, it's great to be back, I have this in my inventory, is this still in the game? Or, what can I do with this? Chances are someone's going to have that information. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Excellent. Well, then I'm not surprised I didn't find it here. Yeah, so if you just do a one-off and then don't spam with 20 of them at a time, but just find the one most pressing. Like, hey, what is this ornate heritage rune of knowledge? Anyone know if I should get rid of that? And you'll probably get some people chiming into world chat with whatever it is, or find streamers who have been in the game a little bit longer. I started a few years ago, but a few years ago in Lotro terms could be like 7 years ago. Because this game has been around for so long. Silencer, yep, you got it. Link them all. Excellent. Cool. Yeah, so if you can find it on the wiki, though, that would be a first start. Because that'll probably have hyperlinks to other things, list of obsolete items, and let you kind of clear it at your own pace. That being said, things that were end game materials are no longer end game materials if you're on a live server, which is up to 140 already because of the fate of Gundabad. So if it was precious once upon a time, it's like, oh man, this is a super awesome crafting item. It may be supplanted by newer things if you are playing to catch up to those levels. So, not to say that you should just hit sell all and clear your inventory, but... But you could. All right. There's a voice in my ear saying, don't do that. That's probably the better voice to listen to, but just saying. Okay. So, where was I? I don't even know. Oh, right. Inner strength. So each of these rows in the UI is currently being implemented by a Soliloquy tracker row. And so in this row, we have an idea for what tier we are at. We have a tier number. So we have the inner strength tier. And so we're not using it anywhere. But we could do, so we have show inner strength. And if we're showing inner strength, then we could go ahead and use that tier. So the first thing, let's draw a couple of controls that are just going to be little white bars. And to do that, we are in the constructor here for the row. And we are going to go ahead and, let's see. Let me pop up an, oops. Let me pop some Soliloquy of Spirits here, just to remind myself what we're drawing. So we have the number of Soliloquy of Spirits. We have inner strength. Excellent. Let's go ahead and create ticks for inner strength tier. And this is just going to be 3 controls, basically. And this is going to be, we're going to need to save this off. So self.inner strength tiers equals an array. And for each one of those, for I equals 1, 2, max inner strength tier, because again, we want to avoid those magic numbers. Why is this 3 here? I don't know. Can I change it? Will it break something? I don't know. We want to avoid that. So do and end. So here, why did I include that? Okay, here we want to go ahead and say that self.inner strength tier tiers of I equals turbine.ui.control. First thing we do is we parent that so that it can be drawn. It has to be parented. Set parent. And what are we doing? We're just parenting under self. That's fine. As long as it eventually is parented by a top-level control, we're good. Oh, Little Redhead asks Silencer what server they're on. So, that's a good question. Silencer asks, the LI refresh is marketed as part of the Gundabot update, I think. Will that be available without the expansion, or is there a later version of Legendaries that I'm not currently aware of? So, the change in Legendaries is as far as I know, is a global change that affects all servers at once when it happened. But there is a transition period. So if you had legendary items, they still work, but you can no longer make any changes to them. And you can't chew through any old legendaries you have. You can't start new ones. You just have the ones that you had. They are whatever they are. And there's a button to kind of cash out their value without selling them. You still have them for an equivalent amount to buy into the new legendary item system. You'll find plenty of resources online, but I do not believe it's tied to any expansion because the change is a global effect to all servers. And so if you have access to legendary items on your character, you've gone through the Holland Gate, the Gates of Moria thing, then you will be in the new legendary item system. Oh, so you missed the part where this is plugging the theme stream. No worries. That's the theme of the stream, but I get off-roaded into other topics quite easily. I don't mind answering the questions where I have any knowledge of. It's the ones where I'm like, I have no clue. Where it's like, let's shove those off. But yes, fundamentally, it is a Lotro stream with a plugin focus. But there's a reason why I've been standing on a rooftop in Breetown for the last 2 hours and haven't moved. And that's because I've been doing the metagame of making a plugin, which, is its own fun. Cool. Okay, so we've made a control. Yes. Let's go ahead and do this real fast. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set position. We know we want this to be in the same X place. Oh, hey. We know we want this to be in the same X place. So let's go ahead and do that. The Y, though, that's trickier. We know, let's see, Y. We included that inner strength tier space. Well, we want to make use of that. So mine is inner strength tier space. So we're going to pop up a little bit. Now, we also have the self dot inner. My buffer got replaced. We're going to set size. And just a guess right now, but the icon widths are 32. And so we want to divide that up into chunks. We want to use 3 chunks plus some space. I'm not convinced 1 pixel is enough. So, where did that go? I don't know. I lost myself. Okay, so UI looks like dot, space, dot, space, dot. So we want those spaces to be smaller than the dashes, because the dashes are the important thing. So if we have 32 pixels to work with, and we lose 4 of them for buffer, then that is 28. 28 doesn't divide evenly, so we can either steal some space from the side or just lose a pixel, and that's fine. So 27, so we know that's about 9 pixels wide. Now, I want to come back and replace that with a actual variable name that makes sense, but for now, it's fine. And how much space was I giving this? 5 pixels. Okay, so let's go ahead. And again, this is a magic number just because we want to do this real fast. But we'll do 3 pixels. Oh, but would it be 9 plus I minus 1 times 9 plus 2. Self dot inner strength tiers I we do need to go ahead and set back color to be turbine.ui.color.white. Okay. Now, if we go ahead and just do this, it's entirely possible that it will not look good. Yeah. Okay, so what did I do wrong? The UI, let's see. If I is 2, then we should be extra over. Tell you what, let's go ahead and just make one of them and see what's going on here. Okay, well, that's not bad. Let's make a second one of them. Okay, that's a problem. So if and let's make sure they're at least positioned in the right place by, okay. Well, it's starting in the right place. That's good. Oh, of course, I did the math on the set size. Whoopsie. We need to set position differently. Size should always be constant there. And there we go. So if we go ahead and pop in the actual max inner strength tier, now the only thing we need to do is go ahead and hide them until it's time to use them. So set visible to false. And then in our code here, if show inner strength, then awesome. Let's do it in here. For I is on, and then I'm just going to go ahead and grab those tiers. If self.inner strength tier is greater than or equals to I, then I haven't actually double checked that that math is correct, but oh, in fact, we want to call set visible on all of them, don't we? Yes, set visible. All right, so if inner strength is 1, then it'll hit 1, but not 2 and 3. If inner strength is 2, I may have inverted that. Let's find out. Oh, hey, 1's visible. 2's are visible. Oh my goodness, that's making me so happy. Okay, awesome. So what we're seeing is a reflection of the strength of inner strength tier 3. Now, if we go ahead and let it expire, which we'll do in 15 seconds, we'll still have some of these Soliloquy of Spirits. And that's where that mismatch was really catching me. That was the inspiration for wanting to do this, was you could have 2 or even 3 Soliloquy of Spirits on a target and their inner strength be tier 1. There was no necessary correlation. Okay, now the one thing I just noticed there is those ticks hung around, which made me a little concerned. Oh, of course, if show inner strength, we want to go ahead and bump that out and just always go through there, regardless of whether we're showing the icon. We want to go ahead and set those values. So we'll restart that. Oh, there's chat happening. Awesome. Yeah, okay. Well, I got 20 seconds to wait for this thing to time out. Might as well catch up on chat. Yeah, Little Redhead's pointing out that Lotro doesn't really have classic servers. Awesome. Yeah, I'm really pleased with the pace of Shadowfax. It more or less approximates my actual pace in real life. So what do we have? Oh, that's subscriber buffs. Story pays. I'm getting 40% of experience that I would normally get. Now, you can counteract that if you have bought some of the expansions that come with special earrings. So this one gives plus 25% experience. And so you can kind of bounce your way back up towards that. Mostly I just use them because they look cool. And I don't have better options right now. Okay, so that makes me really happy. We have the ticks above inner strength. We can see how much time is left on each of the Soliloquy of Spirits. We can see one of them's about to expire, and we can see that the time we think it should last always seems a little bit off from the game time. There's always like an extra second there, but we're just responding to how much time it says it should be around and when the game says it expires. So you have just a little bit of extra time there. And gone. Okay, that is fantastic looking. Silence says, yes, you have all 4 of the XP gifts. Awesome. I maybe pierce the ear multiple times, because otherwise I don't think they're all getting play at the same time. Okay, so what do we have here? We have kind of finished up with a lot of the things that were on the to-do list. So just reiterating, we added that tier indicator, and the next up is adding in party members. We didn't get to that today, but we made a lot of progress. We made the window movable using the control / key here. We made the window hideable, so it respects the, well, for me, F12 key. We made the little ticks show up to show the strength of inner spirit, which is an extra 1% physical and tactical mitigation for each tier. So very important to me to have that maxed out on my tank. Maybe everyone, definitely tanks. So I think we made a lot of progress today. Next time, I want to get to showing this for party members as well. And that's going to be all about learning how do we see how many party members we have when we start up, how do we see when party members leave and come back. Is there a way to know the order of party members? Probably not, but I'm interested to see. And of course, all of these are solved problems if you look at plugins like MiniRaid, but there's a certain joy in discovering the solutions for oneself. And so I'm going to have a lot of fun doing that. Okay. So if there's any last minute questions, let's go ahead and throw them into chat here. I'm going to grab a glass of water and check my notes. Oh, it is the last Tuesday of the month again. Don't forget to tune in for Shoreless Skies Beneath Your Feet. It's 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I forgot to check what they're doing today, but it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, Silencer. I have found that in Lord of the Rings Online, even with the decelerated pace on Treebeard, we still found ourselves buying and equipping the Stone of the Tortoise, which just stops accumulating XP so that we could finish out an area without over-leveling past it. Part of that was just the desire for the challenge, but also part of that was sometimes it's really annoying to find mobs if they're stealthed and they won't attack you because they're too low and their dots don't show up on your radar. And it's like, well, I need 17 goblins, and I know there's goblins around here, but I can't see any. Or in the Lone Lands, when you're finding those stealthed bog lurkers, and it's like, I really wish you all would just attack me so I can defeat you and get credit. But you won't, because I'm 10 levels above you. So we were using the Stone of Tortoise until we hit cap on the server to stop us from over-leveling. And so we would get that full experience of fighting things on level, and also, you know, they would attack us, so we couldn't just run through an area just willy-nilly. So you may or may not find that useful. You can purchase it in the Lotro store for not too much Lotro points, but it is bound to one character, unfortunately. So that's even on a server where we're only getting 40% of experience plus possible earrings, we were still using that a lot because there's just so much content, even in what's available in up to level 50 in Shadows of Magmar. Now there's the Wildwood expansion of Breland. If you haven't seen that, do check it out. The Wildwood up here just southwest of Trestlebridge is a whole new area that was introduced just last year. For levels 45-ish. You could nip in there in the low 40s, but I wouldn't do it on Deadly Landscape difficulty. And cool, yeah, that's what I got. That's it. So that's I I think a little head's got... Oh, good. Trillis, Twitter. Beneath Your Feet is back with a Middle-earth pub crawl, exploring the finest taverns from the Blue Mountains to Gondor. So probably not on Treebeard. And also announcing a giveaway. So do check that out. And in the meantime, that's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of Lotro plugins. I do hope to see you next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye now.